There was a village so quiet that even time seemed to slow down when it passed through. It sat far from any city, far from any road that mattered, tucked between soft rolling hills and long fields that stretched out like a green blanket. If you stood at the edge of the village and looked far enough, you wouldn't see much, just more land, more sky, and the feeling that the world got thinner the farther you went. People there didn't rush. There wasn't much reason to. Mornings came slowly. A pale light would spread across the fields, and the mist would hang low, like it hadn't fully decided whether to leave yet. You could hear small things, birds waking up, a gate creaking, someone chopping wood in the distance. Nothing loud, nothing urgent. This is where he lived. Before he was a soldier, he was just a man from this place. He had a name, of course. But names don't matter much here. You could call him anything, and he would still be the same person. Someone who knew the land better than he knew the world. He woke up early most days. Not because he had to, but because that's just how life worked in the village. The sun came up, so you did too. No alarms. No rushing. Just habit. His house wasn't big. A small wooden place with a roof that creaked a little when the wind got curious. It sat near the edge of the village, where the fields began. From his window, he could see the same view every day, long grass, a dirt path, and hills that looked the same no matter the season. And he liked it that way. Inside, things were simple. A table worn smooth by years of use. A chair that leaned just slightly to one side. A shelf with a few things on it. Nothing special, but enough. Life didn't need much here. He lived with family. Not a big one, but close enough. The kind of people who didn't talk too much, but always knew when something needed to be said. Meals were shared. Work was shared. Silence was shared too. And the silence was never uncomfortable. During the day, he worked the land. Like most people in the village. The soil there wasn't the easiest, but it was familiar. And that mattered more than anything. He knew where it was soft, where it held water, where it needed patience. Farming there wasn't about fighting the land. It was more like an agreement. You give your time, your effort, and in return, it gives you just enough. Some days were long. Some were longer. But they all felt steady. And in the middle of all that steadiness, there were small moments that stood out. Like the way the wind moved across the fields, turning them into waves. Or how the sky changed colors at the end of the day, slowly, like it didn't want to rush the evening. Or the quiet laugh he'd let out when something small went wrong. A tool slipping. A boot sinking into mud. Nothing serious. Just life being a little inconvenient. He wasn't the kind of man who thought too far ahead. In the village, thinking too far ahead didn't really help. Tomorrow looked a lot like today. And the day after that probably would too. And honestly, that was the point. Sometimes, in the evenings, he'd sit outside. Just for a while. Not doing anything. Not thinking too hard. Just watching the light fade. You could say he was content. Not in a big, dramatic way. Not in a life is perfect kind of way. Just in a quiet, steady kind of way. The kind that doesn't need words. The village had others like him too. An older man who always fixed things, even when they didn't need fixing. A woman who baked bread early in the morning, the smell drifting through the air like an announcement that the day had started. Kids who ran through the fields, chasing nothing in particular, but taking it very seriously. It wasn't a place where big things happened. No one came there looking for adventure. No one left chasing it either. The village wasn't on any important map. If it was probably marked so small you'd miss it unless you were really looking. And even then, you might wonder if it was worth the trouble. But to the people who lived there, it was everything. Seasons passed the way they always do. Spring brought soft green shoots and muddy boots. Summer stretched the days long and warm, with work that started early and ended late. Autumn painted everything in tired colors, like the land was getting ready to rest. And winter quieted everything. The fields slept, and so did the village in its own way. Through all of it he stayed. Same routine. Same path through the fields. Same seat at the table. If you had asked him back then about the world beyond the hills, he might have shrugged. Not because he didn't care, just because it felt far away. Like something that existed, sure, but not something that would ever reach him. But the world has a way of reaching even the quietest places. At first, it came as small changes. A traveler passing through, staying just long enough to share a story that didn't quite fit with the calm of the village. A letter delivered to someone else, read quietly, then folded away with a look that lingered a bit too long. Conversations that stopped when someone new walked by. Nothing obvious. Nothing loud. Just different. He noticed, of course. Everyone did in their own way. But noticing something doesn't always mean understanding it. And understanding takes time. So life continued. He woke up early, worked the land, sat in the evenings, laughed at small things. But every now and then, he'd look a little farther than usual, out past the fields, past the hills, as if the horizon had started to ask a question. Not a loud one, just enough to be heard. And the village, still quiet, still slow, didn't yet know that things were already beginning to change. Not all at once. Not in a way you could point to and say, there, that's where it started. It started like most things do. Softly. Almost gently. Like a breeze you don't notice until it's already moved past you. And in that quiet village, at the edge of the map, a man who had never left was already a little closer to doing so. Even if he didn't know it yet. At first, the war did not feel real. It didn't arrive with noise or marching boots or anything dramatic like that. No one rode into the village shouting news. No flags changed. No sky turned dark. It came the same way most big things do in quiet places. Slowly. Indirectly. A little awkward, like it wasn't sure it belonged there. The first hint was a traveler. Not unusual, by the way. People pass through sometimes. Though, passing through usually meant stopping, asking for water, maybe staying the night, and then leaving with a polite nod and a slightly fuller stomach. This one was different. He spoke more than most. Sat longer than needed. And his stories, well, they didn't quite match the calm of the village. He talked about cities far away. Big ones. Loud ones. The kind where people didn't know their neighbors and didn't care to. He talked about trains, about factories, about streets that never really slept. And then, almost like an afterthought, he mentioned the war. Not in detail. Not in a dramatic way. Just casually. Like mentioning the weather. Things are changing, he said, staring into the distance like he could still see it all. A lot of men are being called. Doesn't matter where you're from. Someone asked, called where? The traveler shrugged. Everywhere, I guess. Not the most helpful answer. But it stayed. The village didn't react right away. It didn't panic. It didn't gather in the square to debate what this meant. It simply absorbed the information. Like it did with everything else. Over the next few days, the story drifted from one person to another. It changed slightly each time, the way stories tend to do. By the time it reached him, the soldier not yet a soldier, it had already softened at the edges. There's fighting somewhere far off, someone told him while stacking wood. Doesn't concern us. That last part felt important. Didn't concern us. He nodded. That made sense. Why would it? The village was small. Quite easy to overlook. If you were a war, you'd probably walk right past it without even noticing. At least, that's what it felt like. Life didn't change much after that. He still woke up early. Still worked the fields. Still sat outside in the evenings, watching the light fade like it always did. But now, every so often, the word would come back. It showed up in conversations that trailed off halfway through. In quiet glances between older villagers. In the way people paused just a little longer when someone mentioned the outside world. It didn't take over. It just lingered. Then came the letter. Not his letter. Someone else's. Delivered one afternoon, when the sun was high and the air felt thick with heat. The kind of day where everything moves a little slower, like even time is taking a break. The postman, if you could call him that, arrived with his usual tired expression and a small bundle of papers. Most were nothing special. Messages between relatives. Notes about trade. Ordinary things. But one letter stood out. You could tell by the way it was handed over. Carefully. Quietly. The man who received it didn't open it right away. He held it for a moment, like he already knew what it said and just needed time to accept it. Then he opened it. Read it once. Then again. And something in his face changed. Not dramatically. Not in a way that would alarm anyone walking by. But if you knew him, you'd notice. He didn't say much after that. Just folded the letter, tucked it away, and went back to what he was doing. But word spreads quickly in quiet places. By evening, people knew. It wasn't just a distant conflict anymore. Men were being called. Not just in cities. Everywhere. That word again. Everywhere. Still, the village didn't panic. It wasn't that kind of place. Instead, something subtler happened. Conversations grew quieter. Not fewer, just softer. People spoke like they didn't want to disturb something. Or maybe like they were hoping if they kept their voices low enough, whatever was coming might pass them by. He listened more than he spoke. That was always his way. But now, he listened differently. More carefully. As if trying to piece together something that didn't quite make sense yet. That night, he sat outside longer than usual. The air had cooled and the sky was clear. Stars stretched across it in a way that made everything else feel small. He leaned back slightly, hands resting on the ground behind him, and looked up. Same sky as always. Nothing had changed there. And yet, something felt off. Not wrong. Not dangerous. Just uncertain. Like when the weather shifts, but you can't quite tell how. Inside the house, his family moved about quietly. The soft sounds of dishes, low voices, the usual end-of-day rhythm. It should have felt normal. And in many ways, it did. But now there was a question sitting just beneath the surface. Unspoken. Unanswered. He didn't have the words for it. Didn't even try to. Instead, he picked up a small stone from the ground and turned it in his hand. A simple thing. Rough edges. Nothing special. He'd probably seen it 100 times before. But now he noticed it more. Funny how that works. When something big starts to approach, you begin to pay attention to small things. The things that don't change. The things you can hold on to. The next morning came like all the others. Soft light. Cool air. The village waking up slowly. He stepped outside, stretched a little, and looked out at the fields. They were the same. Of course they were. The land didn't care about distant wars. It had its own rhythm. And for a moment, that was enough. He went about his day as usual. Work needed to be done. Crops didn't grow because of worry. But the thoughts stayed with him. Not loud. Not demanding. Just present. Like a shadow that didn't quite match the shape of what cast it. Later that day, he passed by the man who had received the letter. They exchanged a nod. Nothing more. But in that brief moment, something passed between them. An understanding, maybe. Or just the recognition that things were no longer as simple as they had been. No words were needed. There rarely were in the village. As the sun began to set again, painting the sky in soft fading colors, he found himself looking out past the hills once more. Further than before. As if trying to see something that wasn't visible yet. The horizon didn't answer. It never did. But it held its line. Quiet. Distant. Unmoving. And somewhere beyond it, something had already begun. Something that would not stay distant forever. Something that, slowly and patiently, was making its way toward the village. Toward him. And for now, all he could do was wait. Even if he didn't yet know what he was waiting for.